Good morning, everyone. I want to share with you two stories that illustrate an important point. You hear it said often, people don't change. Well, I beg to differ. People don't change because they will themselves to change or they discipline themselves to change. They change for one very specific reason. So I'm going to tell you two stories and then I will speak about this change that I'm referencing. Here's the first story. Many years ago, Al Capone virtually owned the city of Chicago. Capone wasn't famous for anything heroic. He was notorious at enmeshing the city in everything from bootleg booze to prostitution to murder. And Capone had a lawyer named Easy Eddie. And he was Capone's lawyer for a very good reason. Easy Eddie was good, very good at what he did. In fact, Eddie was able to keep Al Capone with his legal maneuvering out of prison for many, many, many years. To show his appreciation, Capone paid Easy Eddie extremely well. Not only was the money big, but so were the special dividends as well. For instance, Eddie and his family occupied a fenced-in mansion with live-in help and all the conveniences of the day. The estate was so large that it occupied an entire city block within the city of Chicago. Eddie lived the high life of the Chicago mob, and gave little consideration to all the atrocity that surrounded the circumstances of his life. But Eddie had one soft spot. He had a son whom he loved dearly. And Eddie saw to it that his young son had all the clothes, all the cars, all the education that was required. Nothing was withheld. No price was any object. And despite his involvement with organized crime, Eddie even tried to teach his son right from wrong. Eddie wanted his son, frankly, to be a better man than he was. Yet with all the wealth and influence, there was one thing that Eddie could not give to his son, and that was he could not pass on a good name. One day, Eddie reached a difficult conclusion. Easy Eddie wanted to make right all the wrongs that he had done. So he decided that he would go to the authorities, tell the truth about Al Scarface Capone, clean up his tarnished name, and offer his son some semblance of integrity. To do this, he would have to testify against the mob, and he knew what he was facing, what he was up against, and what the odds were. Even so, he testified. Within a year, Easy Eddie's life ended in a blaze of gunfire on a lonely Chicago street. But in his eyes, he had given his son the one gift that was worthy, and that was a good name. And at the greatest of price he could ever pay, Eddie laid down his life for his son. Police removed from his dead body's pockets 4 things: a rosary, a crucifix, a religious medallion, and a poem clipped from a local magazine. And the poem read like this: "The clock of life is wound but once, and no man has the power to tell just when the hands will stop, at late or early hour. Now is the only time you own. Live, love, toil with a will. Place no faith in time, for the clock may soon be still." This was the story of Easy Eddie. Now let me tell you a second story. In World War II, there were many heroes, and one such hero was Lieutenant Commander Butch O'Hare. O'Hare was a fighter pilot assigned to the aircraft carrier Lexington in the South Pacific. One day, his entire squadron was sent on mission, And after he was airborne, Butch O'Hare looked at his fuel gauge and realized that someone had neglected to top off his fuel tank. He did not have enough fuel to complete his mission and get back to his ship. His flight leader instructed him to turn around and go back to the carrier. And reluctantly, Butch dropped out of formation and headed back to the fleet. As he was returning to the mothership, he saw something that turned his blood cold. A squadron of Japanese aircrafts speeding their way toward the American fleet. Now, the American fighter planes were all gone on sortie, and the fleet was completely defenseless. Butch couldn't race to the squadron fast enough to bring them back in time to rescue the fleet, nor could he go warn the fleet of the approaching aircraft. There was only one thing that he could do. Somehow, he must divert these Japanese fighters himself. So, laying aside all thoughts of personal safety, he dove into the formation of Japanese planes. Wing-mounted .50 calibers blazing away as he charged in, attacking one surprised Japanese plane after another. Butch wove in and out of the now broken formation and fired at as many planes as possible until his ammunition was completely spent. Undaunted, he continued the assault. He dove at the planes, trying to clip a wing or a tail in hopes of damaging as many enemy planes as possible, rendering them unfit to fly. Well, finally, exasperated, the Japanese squadron took off in the different direction. Deeply relieved, Butch O'Hare and his tattered fighter limped back to the Lexington. Upon arrival, he reported and related the events surrounding his return. And the film from the gun-mounted camera on his plane told the tale. It showed the extent of Butch O'Hare's heroism, daring to attempt to protect his fleet. He had, in fact, destroyed 5 enemy aircraft, making Butch O'Hare the Navy's very first ace of World War II, the first naval air aviator to win the Congressional Medal of Honor. A year later, Butch was killed in aerial combat at the age of 29. His hometown would not allow the memory of their World War II hero to fade, and so today, in Chicago, O'Hare Airport is named in tribute to the courage of this great young man. So the next time you find yourself changing a flight in O'Hare International, give some thought to visiting Butch O'Hare's memorial displayed between Terminals 1 and 2. It has, among other things, his Congressional Medal of Honor there. Now, just what do these two stories have to do with each other? Well, Butch O'Hare was Easy Eddie's son. And when people say that you can't change, it's just not true. But I'll tell you, after having been a pastor for 38 years, the one thing that I have seen that changes people, it's not discipline, it's not education, it's not trying hard. The one thing that seems to change people from the inside out is God's unconditional love. I've seen that change many a life. And that's why we are here at Trinity United Methodist Church, because we believe that God and His unconditional love, His amazing grace, changes people from the inside out. God bless you all.